ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय जन्माद्यस्य यतो अन्वयादितरतश्च अर्थेषु अभिज्ञस्वराट् तेने ब्रह्महृदाय आदिकवये मुह्यन्ति यत्सूरयः तेजो वारिमृदां यथा विनिमयो यत्र त्रिसर्गो मृषा धाम्ना स्वेन सदा निरस्तकुहकं सत्यं परं धीमहि निगमकल्पतरोर्गलितं फलं शुकमुखादमृतद्रवसंयुतं पिबत भागवतं रसमालयं मुहुरहो रसिका भुवि भावुकाः. We now enter the 14th chapter of the 10th Skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we saw in the last chapter how Brahma tried to show his power to Krishna by hiding the calves and the boys, and Krishna simply exhibited his greatest Maya, his greatest Yoga Maya, by expanding himself as all the calves and all the boys, thus demonstrating that he is all there is, Sarvam Vishnumayam, as it is said, and also, meanwhile, giving the greatest joy of being his mother and father for all the cowherd men and women, and being his mother for even the cows who had as the calves Krishna himself, and thereby increasing their joy in an unbounded way. And after that, Brahma realized his folly when he was given the vision that every single boy was Narayana himself, and then he fell at his feet prostrate, and with tears of joy and also remorse, he was offering his prayers. So those prayers, now Shuka Brahma Rishi narrates for us most beautiful prayers of Brahma to Krishna. So Brahma begins by saying, "O Krishna, I offer my prayers to you. You are the son of cowherd, you are Gopala, Nandagopa, that is son of Nandagopa, you are son of a cowherd, and you have tender feet, and you are having this complexion like the cloud, Shama, and you have costume, that is your dress is like gold, like lightning, yellow gold, and your face is resplendent, and you are wearing this beautiful garland of forest flowers, Vanamala, and with all this, you are simply going around as a boy in this Vrindavan, and I, as Brahma, as the creative energy of this whole universe, have come forth from you, and I cannot comprehend you, even with my mind inwardly turned, even with meditation. I cannot comprehend you, especially in this personality of yours. That is why I got fooled. I saw this personality of you as this young, small boy playing with the other cowherd boys, and I got deluded because I cannot comprehend that you are indeed the supreme being who is here roaming around as a small boy, and your grace, it is due to which you take the various forms according to the will of your devotees, and all these forms of you, and especially this particular form as Krishna, as this beautiful cowherd boy, is not of material nature, it's transcendent, it is made of Satchit Ananda, truth, bliss, and consciousness. He says, Kim uta atma sukhanubhute. So your very body is transcendental. It is sukhanubhute. It is made of the bliss of atma bhava. That is the pure self, which is pure consciousness, has taken this form, and therefore, though you appear like a small cowherd boy, and that's why I got deluded, you are indeed the supreme being whose form itself is transcendental. And then he goes on to say that people, therefore, who are able to simply, instead of trying to understand you, if they simply listen to your stories, if there are those who narrate your stories and people just listen to it, the saints who go around narrating your beautiful stories, if people engage their body, speech, and mind in simply listening to those beautiful stories, which can just fall in their ears, all they have to do is give their ears to these stories, and that alone is enough. Without any effort, without any meditation, they can attain the greatest spiritual enlightenment. However, those who neglect that, who neglect this process of beautiful, loving devotion by simply listening to your names and pastimes, instead of that, if they take pains and they engage in all kinds of efforts to attain enlightenment, such enlightenment is only causing a lot of exertion, but in fact, they never actually attain this enlightenment. because enlightenment is possible only through your grace, and loving devotion to you bestows it effortlessly. And without that loving devotion, it's always difficult and it seems to be elusive. So he says, Shreyas Shrutim Bhakti Mudasyate Vibho Klishyanti ye Kevala Bodhalabdhye. So those who simply want enlightenment and they are not in the mood of bhakti and loving devotion, they have great difficulty in realizing you. They have great difficulty in attaining the very enlightenment they are seeking. And therefore, he says, so many who are engaged in various yogas, various spiritual disciplines, they give up finally and they then surrender everything unto you. And when they simply surrender everything unto you, they give up all their efforts and they resign everything unto you. They offer everything back unto you with this loving devotion. Then they attain this love to listen to your stories, listen to your names, and thereby attain your supreme state. So, this is the secret. He says, it is not through one's effort but through grace that one realizes the true self. So, when we make effort, the very entity making effort is the ego, and therefore, the entity that's making the effort is indeed the one that is preventing from the realization. So, all that is necessary, therefore, is a total surrender. When we recognize through the wisdom, which is the same as inquiry, as to who is making effort to realize, who is making effort to attain enlightenment, and recognize that that is the very ego, and recognize that that very ego, the I thought, is in fact coming forth from the cosmic intelligence, and all there is the cosmic intelligence that appears as the I, that appears as the mind, that appears as the senses, that appears as the body, and that appears as the whole universe. Then the very entity making the effort is offered back unto you, and thereby one can attain the supreme state, which is your truth. They say, Achyuta te gatim param. Then they realize the immortal state of you, Achyuta. And that is why Brahma says, you can be realized only by the pure hearted who, through inquiry, they get rid of all objectivity. So, that is, anything that is an objective phenomenon is simply outside, and therefore, if we recognize that every objective phenomenon, including the I thought, including the ego, is coming within the field of awareness. So, he says, if the senses are turned inward, if the mind is turned inward, if everything is turned inward, then there is only the self effulgent entity who is the subject, and the objects are all simply appearing within. So, your true nature is that you are the subject of all, you are the very self of all, and therefore, to try to recognize you, realize you through any phenomenal experience is always elusive. So, when one recognizes that every phenomenal experience, that is, every objective experience, starting with the very sense of ego, the I, and to every aspect of the universe, is coming forth only from your cosmic intelligence, Mahat Tattva, and the very subject that perceives everything is pure awareness, that is your very nature, then only one can realize it. And therefore, this is why total surrender of every external phenomena, starting with the I thought, and thereby total abidance in the inner subjective pure self, is the way to realize the truth. And that is why Krishna says in the Gita, Aham Atma Gudakesha Sarva Bhutashayastitaha. I am the self of all, residing in the hearts of all. So he who is the self of all cannot be realized through any external process, but by only recognizing that everything that's external is coming forth from you, Krishna, and the very perceiver, the very subject, the very awareness in which everything is coming forth is you alone. By recognizing this alone, one can attain your true state. Otherwise, how can one recognize you? He says, who has ever succeeded in knowing all your attributes, because they are infinite in nature? So, as we said, the entire universe, every single aspect, all animate beings, inanimate beings, everything that there is all an expression of your intelligence, and therefore, how can one enumerate? He says here, one can even count the particles of dust on this whole planet, one can even count all the rays that is coming forth from the sun and the other luminaries like stars. But to count all the infinite attributes of you, all the infinite potencies of you, is impossible, because every single thing, from the smallest to the grandest, from the minutest to the most gigantic, is all coming forth only from you. And therefore, how can one count anything? How can enumerate anything? How can one understand anything? So, the simple and direct way is to recognize that everything is coming forth from you, and the one who is aware of everything is also you. By recognizing this alone, one can realize the truth of who you are. And therefore, he says, the one thereby who surrenders unto you, he is automatically bestowed with liberation, even though he doesn't even care for it. That is, the irony of this is, the one who doesn't seek liberation is liberated. As long as one is seeking liberation, one is caught in the ego and one is wanting moksha, which is a desire like any other desire. And when that desire goes away, and when one is simply free of all desire, seeing only the Supreme Being as the only truth and his energy as the manifest universe in every way, then he is automatically liberated, because the sense of false I, false ego, is completely gone, and all there is the fearless, supreme, divine state. So that is why akama is considered the highest state, more than moksha kama. Even moksha kama means desiring liberation, akama means without any desire. So here Brahma says, the one who has no desire, including the desire for liberation, is the one who is actually liberated. And then Brahma says, turning to himself, look at me, I was so wicked in that I was trying to test you like a fool. You are the infinite Lord, you are the cause of all, you are the Supreme Spirit, and in front of you I am nothing. And yet I was trying to test you, I was trying to show my prowess in front of you. It is nothing but the same as a spark trying to show its prowess in front of fire. So, when a giant fire is blazing, out of that many sparks come. And if a spark which has got the quality of the fire therefore thinks it can display its power to the very fire from which it came, it would be stupid. And that's exactly what Brahma says. That's what I did. By not recognizing that my very existence is coming forth from you, I try to delude you. So forgive this fault of mine, because I was only blinded by ignorance. And because of that, I thought myself to be a great entity, to be the creator, and therefore I only deserve your pity. Please show your compassion, he says, because he says that, I have a very huge body, being the creator of this cosmic universe, or that very power has been vested in me by you, and you are the infinite Lord in whom I also subside, and I come forth from you, and therefore I am nothing in front of you, even though I am the creative energy of this whole universe. But then he says beautifully that just as the fetus in the womb of a mother, when the fetus kicks the mother doesn't feel offended by it, but instead she feels happy about it. Similarly, he says, you also can consider me like this little fetus inside you, and my offense against you is nothing but like the fetus inside the mother kicking the mother. So please consider it in this way, and thereby show your loving compassion, which you always do. Then he says, it is indeed true that I, as Brahma, have come forth only from you, Narayana. And then he says a beautiful verse. He says, you are Narayana. You are the life and soul of all embodied beings. You are the very witness of all creatures. And you are so called because you abide in the eternal causal waters, and you appear in infinite form, and you also take on finite form like this. Everything is a sport of yours. He says, Narayanastvam nahi sarvadehinam atmasya disha akhila loka sakshi narayano angam Narabhuja layanat anchapi satyam na tavaiva maya. He says, Narayanastam, you are Narayana, Sarvadehinam Atma, you are the self of all beings, Akhila Loka Sakshi, you are the witness of the entire universe. And then he says, Satyam na tavaiva maya, everything is only your maya, your sport, you taking a finite form and your infinite form of this cosmic universe are all only your own sport. And therefore he says, in this form you abide in the causal waters, and then in this form now you are roaming around in the woodlands of Vrindavan. You engage in so many beautiful pastimes, and therefore he says, how can I truly comprehend you? How can I understand you? Because you are all pervading, and everything depends only on your grace. So to even understand you, Brahma says, to understand your true nature requires your grace. Otherwise, people may look at you as this young boy in the woodlands of Vrindavan, roaming around, eating food and playing, and think you are like an ordinary boy, or perhaps a boy with some great attraction and powers because of some of the feats you have done. But they'll not recognize that you are the supreme being unless you bestow their grace upon them. So now Brahma beautifully concludes correctly that to even understand you requires your grace, O Krishna. And then he says, in this descent of yours as Krishna, in this particular descent where you have come here, the undoubtedly illusory character of the entire universe was revealed by you. So he refers to the pastime of how Krishna showed the entire universe in his mouth to his mother. We saw this pastime where Krishna ate mud, and then Yashoda, the mother, asked Krishna, "Did you eat mud?" And Krishna said, "No," like a cute boy. And then Yashoda said, "Open your mouth and show me." And Krishna opened the mouth, and there she saw the entire universe. And most amazingly, she saw within that mouth, within the whole universe, also Krishna there, and Yashoda seeing into his mouth. So Yashoda seeing in his mouth, Yashoda seeing in his mouth. So it was recursive, and thereby she saw the whole universe, including the very pastime of Krishna showing the universe to Yashoda, was seen within Krishna's mouth. So seeing this, Yashoda was so bewildered. So Brahma refers to that and says, in this very avatar, in this very descent, you showed the entire illusory nature of the universe, because thereby you showed that everything is simply your projection, and therefore everything simply appears in you, and everything comes out of you, and everything is going back into you, and all of this is only due to your own Maya. And therefore he says, and that illusory nature of the universe was revealed by you to me today, because when I first stole the calves and the cowherd boys who were the keepers of the calves, you showed that in fact you alone exist by expanding as them. So the reality is, even all the boys and calves are in fact only you alone in your cosmic energy. It's your cosmic energy that's expanded as the whole universe. And every single speck of this universe is your cosmic energy alone. Your the prakriti, your material energy. And to demonstrate that visibly, you physically expanded as all the cowherd boys and the calves, and thereby showed that everything is you alone, everything is your expansion. And by then also revealing that all of them were forms of Narayana, by revealing the forearm, that is Chaturbhuja form of each one of them, you showed me that you can even have as many universes as you want inside of you. He says you can, as the infinite Brahman, have everything within you. You can manifest multiple universes within you. Everything is possible for you. And therefore, he says, those who are ignorant of you, they think that you are the spirit alone, and everything happens, and there is various powers and various entities for creation, sustenance, and dissolution, and so on. But the reality is, you alone appear as everything, and therefore, in order to curb the foolish pride of the wicked, you have appeared in all these various avatars. You have appeared among devatas, you have appeared among humans, you have appeared among beasts, birds, and everything, even though you are birthless. So, he here refers to the various avatars. Krishna appeared as Narayana, he appeared as Matsya, the fish, he appeared as Kurma, the tortoise, he appeared as Varaha, the boar, he appeared as Narasimha, the man lion, he appeared as Vamana, who was born among the Devatas, as Upendra. So, and then he of course appeared as Sri Ram as a human being. So Brahma refers to all these avatars and says, you came in so many ways among so many species to reveal your greatness, even though you are truly birthless. And he says, you always engage in various sports by spreading the curtain of your yoga maya, and therefore nobody is able to know you, and they don't know where or how or when you come into play, in which way, and therefore everything appears and vanishes in your infinite self. You are the embodiment of eternal bliss, eternal consciousness, and in you appears this entire universe, which seems to be real, but which in fact is only an appearance. And therefore, he says beautifully in a nice verse, he says, you are the one self, you are the most ancient being, you are the only truth, you are self luminous, you are infinite, you are the first, you are eternal, you are imperishable, you are uninterrupted bliss, you are untainted by your own maya, you are perfect, you are without a second, and you are immortal. Such a beautiful set of adjectives, all for Krishna. He says, Ekastvam Atma Purusha Purana Satyah Swayam Jyotir Ananta Adyah Nitya Aksharo Jasra Sukho Niranjanah Purno Advayo Mukta Upadito Amritaha. Every single word is so beautiful. Each word is being described. Ekaha, you are the only one. Atma, you are the self of all. Purushaha, you are the supreme being. Puranaha, most ancient. Satyaha, you are the only truth. Swayam Jyoti, you are self-effulgent. Anantaha, you are the infinite. Adyaha, you are the original source of all. Nityaha, you are eternal. Aksharaha, you are imperishable. Niranjanaha, you are untainted. Purnaha, you are perfect. Advayaha, without a second. Muktaha, ever free. Amritaha, you are nectar, like pure immortal nectar. So every single adjective used in this verse is so beautiful. Brahma glorifies Krishna. And then he says, therefore, one who surrenders unto you, one who recognizes your truth like this, he is able to cross this false ocean of mundane existence. He uses very beautifully the expression false ocean. So it seems like an ocean of mundane existence. It's normally called as Bhavasagara, ocean of mundane existence. But in reality, it is a false thing, because in reality, there is no ocean of mundane existence, because everything is only the cosmic energy of the Supreme Being. When one recognizes it, then here and now, we recognize the glory of Bhagavan, and there is nothing to cross. That's why he says, Taranti iva bhava anrutam buddhim. Anruta means unreal. So this ocean, bhava, is the material existence, and the ocean of material existence, bhava sagara, is anruta, is actually unreal. It's false, but it seems real. Those who fail to perceive the truth of your being, the truth of this universe, they are caught in your very maya. And just as the serpent appears in the dark when one sees a rope and mistakes it to be a serpent, similarly, they take this universe to be a separate entity and a reality that is separate from you, without recognizing that everything is your projection. And when they perceive the truth, then this very illusion disappears. The illusion of the universe as a separate objective reality disappears, and what remains is the clear vision that everything is a projection of your material energy, and you alone pervade the whole universe. And therefore, he says, bondage and release are in fact merely names given through ignorance. So, this is a very beautiful verse that Brahma gives. Normally, everybody talks about liberation, moksha, and therefore there is the talk of bondage. So, here Brahma says both bondage and liberation are simply ideas, because only when one takes oneself to be a separate entity, and therefore one thinks that one is an individual who seeks liberation, then there is the idea of moksha. When one recognizes that the very idea of individuality itself is coming from the material energy of the Lord, the I thought and everything that comes forth as the individual is simply an expression of the Supreme Being's material energy, and so is the whole universe. And He alone pervades the universe as pure awareness, as the substrate, and this energy alone is manifest as the cosmic intelligence of the whole universe, when one recognizes it, then there is nobody who is bound, there is nobody to be liberated. That is the ultimate truth. That is why he says, Ajnana samyau bhavabandha mokshau dvau nama na anyau sta rita bhava. So they are nama na anyau, they are just a name. Bhava bandha moksha. Bhava bandha moksha means bondage and liberation from this world are both dvav nam, are both names called out of ignorance, ajnana samya. Due to ignorance, one says one is bound in this world and one needs to get liberated from this world. But in reality, they are not. Na anya, they are not either. They are simply an imagination because of ignorance. When in truth, when one investigates into the truth of it, then one recognizes that all there is only you as the true supreme being, whose truth and consciousness, and therefore nothing exists other than you, just as both day and night do not have any separate existence from the sun. So, very beautiful analogy given here, which is very scientific too. When the night comes, it appears as if the sun is not there, and that is our normal impression. But of course, the sun hasn't gone anywhere. It is just that we are not able to see the sun, and therefore we think the sun is not there, but the sun is ever present. Similarly, he says here that you are ever present as the only truth, but when you are not seen in our vision, we think that the universe is reality that is separate from you, and therefore we have to attain you. But when we recognize that you are ever present and it is your reflection, so it's a beautiful metaphor, because even in the night when the moonlight is there, the moonlight is simply a reflection of the sun, and so we actually do not have any light other than the sunlight, including nighttime when the moon is shining. And similarly, here he says, even the universe is simply a reflection of you. And when one recognizes it, that the universe is itself a reflection of your energy, then one has to go nowhere to seek you, but realize you here and now as the only truth of all there is. And therefore, he says, only the ignorant folks who regard you as other than themselves and they consider the body to be their self, they keep looking for you. So it's every verse is so beautiful. He says, Tvam atmanam param matva paramatmanam evacha atma punarbahir mrigya aho agnya janata agnyata. So he says, aho, oh, how sad that people, they tvam atmanam paramatva, you are the very self, paramatva, they think themselves, they think you to be something else. You being the very self, they project you as something else, as God outside, and then they are searching for this paramatma, the supreme self, without recognizing that the very self of all beings is you alone. And because of this ignorance of taking themselves to be the body and then looking for you outside somewhere, they miss you, when in fact if they turn inward, they would recognize that you are the very self shining forth. And therefore he says the truly wise ones, they realize you by rejecting everything that is other than you as false. So they do not give any independent existence to the body, the mind, the senses, but they recognize everything as connected to you, and thereby they are not deluded by this, and because of that correct judgment, they are able to negate the false snake. So he refers to the same metaphor and says, when the snake is seen in the dark because of no light, the rope is mistaken as snake, and when the light is turned on, then the snake is automatically gone and the rope alone remains. Similarly, by this light of wisdom, they negate the false idea that there are things, body, mind, objects, and the universe separate from you. And when the light of wisdom is on, they recognize that everything is simply your own energy, and thereby this delusion is gone. And therefore, he says it's only by your grace that people can realize all this. It is not that people can recognize it by investigating. So, this is a very important verse. He says, Janati Tattvam Bhagavan Mahimno Nacha Anya Eko Api Chiram Vichinvan. So people can inquire for however long they inquire, investigate, study, and all the rest, but without your grace, Without an iota of your grace, of your lotus feet, they cannot realize this truth. So this is the ultimate truth, that it is not through simply intellectually analyzing and inquiring that one can recognize and understand all this, but it is by His grace that we understand. And this is emphasized in every single Upanishad, in all the great scriptures. And here, Bhagavatam, Brahma gives his instruction that it is your grace that makes us realize all this. And therefore, he says, may I have this great fortune too, in that may I be also your devotee. So Brahma, who is in such a high state as the creative energy, he is envious of the cowherd boys and cowherd men and women. What to speak of the cowherd girls, whose love for Krishna is yet to be seen. So Brahma is envious of all the residents of Vrindavan, and he says, I only wish to be born as one of these residents. And so he says, how blessed are these cowherd men and women, and in fact, how blessed are even these cows, because every one of them were able to treat you as their own son for 1 year. The udders of all the cows gave you milk when they were feeding their calves, and all the mothers were giving you milk when they were feeding their children. So, in this way, they were all having this great fortune of bathing you, dressing you, feeding you, and so on. How remarkable is the fortune of everyone, in that their dear one is Krishna, the Supreme Being. Such a nice verse now again. He says, Aho bhagyam, Nandagopa Vrijauka Yan Mitram Paramanandam Purnam Brahma Sanatanam. So every word is beautiful. Their Mitram, their friend is Paramanandam Purnam Brahma Sanatanam. The supreme bliss, Paramanandam, Purnam, the perfect, Brahma Sanatanam, the eternal being, the infinite being, they consider that to be their friend, their son, their beloved, and so on. Such is the fortune of the cowherd men and women headed by Nanda. He says, Aho Bhagyam, Nanda Gopa Vrijaukasam. Headed by Nanda, the entire land of Vrindavan is so blessed. He says it's beyond any measure. In fact, even we partake a little bit of that blessing, because it is said that all the devatas reside in the various senses, and therefore each sense is considered to be the storehouse, or there is a presiding deity for every sense. For example, the intellect is headed by Brahma, and the eyes are headed by sun, and hearing is headed by Dig Devatas, and so on. So here he says that all these various devatas, including me, who are heading different senses, different faculties, we get a little bit of the grace, because we are also situated as the presiding deities in all these cowherd boys and girls, men and women, and thereby we get a little bit when they are in contact with you. But then how much more do they get, because they are directly in touch with you every moment? And therefore he says, my greatest prayer is I be born. So he is Brahma, he is the first created being, and yet he here humbly prays that I would rather be born in Gokul, or even more in Vrindavan, and simply bathe in the dust of the lotus feet of the residents of Vrija, for whom their very life is you, O Mukunda. Such a beautiful prayer. He says, you are Lord Mukunda, the giver of true liberation, by taking away the false sense of individuality, and you are not to be understood by any other means, including study of all the Vedas and all of the Upanishads and all the rest, but only by your grace. And this Mukunda, this supreme being that you are, the residents of this Vrindavan, they treat you as their very life. And so all I want is to be bathing in the dust of their lotus feet. Then he says, our mind is puzzled to think only one thing. He says very beautifully that there is one thing that puzzles me. He says, you can bestow any reward, any blessing, any benediction to anyone, but what can you possibly give these cowherd men and women beyond this? So it's a very beautiful prayer. He says, you are the Lord of everything. You can bestow the greatest blessing on anyone, but then you have already bestowed the greatest blessing on these cowherd men and women, boys and girls. by this such intimate association with you. So, what can you possibly do beyond this? And in fact, we will see that Krishna does something beyond this, and that is the beautiful, loving mood of separation. So, when Krishna leaves Vrindavan and he goes to Mathura, all these gopis and gopas and all of them, we will see that later, are drowned in this mood of separation. And what they find is the mood of separation is actually more intense than when they were intimately associating with Krishna, and thereby their love was even more increased. So, those who truly understand it, many ask, why did not Krishna come back to Vrindavan after he went to Mathura? Because of this very reason, that he wanted to give them the highest taste of love, which is even beyond intimate association, which is through the intense separation that is felt every moment, which heightened their love to a level that is beyond all description. And that is how Krishna would answer this question. But now Brahma simply asks a question. Then he says beautifully that all the attachments people have, whether it's house or relations or everything, they are a fetter, they are a bondage only as long as people don't surrender unto you. It's a very beautiful secret here he gives. He says, normally we consider the sense pleasures, the relations, the house, everything as a source of bondage, and people with this mode of vairagya tend to walk away from it. But the real secret is not necessarily walk away, because wherever we go, the mind is always coming with us. But instead, if we surrender completely unto you, that the senses belong to you, the house belongs to you, the body belongs to you, everything belongs to you, then wherever we are, there is no bondage at all. And that is the highest secret, he says. He says, तावद् रागादयः स्तेनास्तावत् कारागृहं गृहं तावन् मोहो अङ्घ्रि निगडो यावत् कृष्ण नते जनः. As long as one is not surrendered to you, Krishna, then these are all like fetters or bondage. Once one surrenders unto you, then none of this is a bondage. And therefore, he says, in order to swell the volume of joy of people, you have taken all these beautiful pastimes, you are increasing their joy more and more. So he says nicely, people who try to understand you, who try to know you, who try to learn about you, let them do whatever they want. What is the point of talking about them? All I know is that your glory does not lie within the reach of mind, body, senses, and speech. He says, Jananta eva janantu kim bahu vaktya name prabho manaso vapusho vacho vaibhavam tava gochara. He says, let them try. Whoever is studying, learning, inquiring in a dry way, they let them do whatever they do. All I know is that you are beyond the reach of mind, words, speech, intellect, and all of it. And therefore, I am very happy to simply surrender unto you. So now please give me leave, O glorious Krishna. I am now going back to my abode of Brahmaloka, and this world and this body, everything is offered unto you. And therefore, he says, offering his final prayer, he says, O Krishna, who brings joy to the whole race of Vrishnis, who makes the ocean of devotees swell like the moon. So, just as the moon makes the ocean swell, you make the joy of devotees swell, you remove darkness, and you are the enemy of all the wicked, evil forces, and you are the only object of adoration. Let my salutations be unto you. He says, Sri Krishna, Bhagavan Namaste. I offer my obeisances unto you. And thus glorifying Krishna in the most beautiful way, Brahma takes leave, and Krishna also grants him leave, blesses him, and he goes away. Then Krishna does his beautiful Maya now. He brings back all these boys exactly to the same place where they were 1 year ago. So, as we saw, all these boys were put to yogic sleep by Brahma in a cave, and all the calves too. So, Krishna had expanded as all the boys and all the calves. Now that Brahma has gone away, he withdraws all these expansions and now brings the boys who were sleeping in the cave back up. And not only does he wake them up, but he wakes them up and by his yogic Maya brings them instantly to the very bank of the river where they were eating food. And Krishna was also eating food. So it's so beautiful how Krishna arranges it. And then these boys, they have completely forgotten. They did not realize that the whole year had passed. They did not know that they were put to sleep in a cave. They have no recollection. All they know is the last moment I was eating, and Krishna went looking for the calves, and now Krishna has come back. So he says, "Oh Krishna, it's great that you have come back. We are still eating. Please join us." So this is the glory. So Krishna still has that beautiful morsel of yogurt rice, curd rice in his hand, exactly how he had it 1 year ago. And these boys are sitting there exactly on the river bank where they were sitting 1 year ago. And they see Krishna walking back, and they think Krishna has just come back, having gone to look for the calves. They have no memory whatsoever of all the things that happened. Specifically, from their perspective, the fact that they went and they were put to sleep in a cave, they got up nothing. All they know is the last moment they were eating, and now they are also eating. And Krishna is back after going looking for the calf. So they say, "Oh Krishna, join us. The food is still here. We are waiting for you." So Krishna laughs in his heart beautifully at this wonderful innocence of all these cowherd boys, and he takes his meal, and then he goes and shows the skin of the python. As we saw, all this happened on the day Aghasura was killed. After Aghasura was killed, only this pastime happened 1 year ago. So the whole question that prompted the story was when Parikshit asked, how come that this story happened when Krishna was 5, but it was narrated only when he was 6 to the residents of Vrindavan. And not only that, when it was narrated, they thought it happened the same day. So now this whole mystery is revealed beautifully through these two episodes. The first episode of how it happened, and now the prayers of Brahma, and after that how the boys were woken up from their yogic sleep. And so they, according to them, it all happened today. And so they go and look at Aghasura, the demon who came as a python, and his dead body is there, and they play in that huge, what looks like a cave. And then they all go back to Vrindavan that evening, and they think it all happened in that day. And all the residents of Vrindavan also do not have any recollection. They also think their boys went that morning, and they're all back. And therefore, everyone is so happy. They are playing their flutes, their horns, their bugles, and they are shouting at their calves. And they all very proudly say, "Today a large serpent came, and it was killed by this beautiful son of Yashoda and Nanda." They say, "Adya anena mahavyalo Yashoda Nanda sununa. Hato avita vayam cha asma aditi bala vraje jaguhu." He says, the son of Yashoda and Nanda, our dear friend Krishna, today he killed this massive serpent. So this is how that story unfolded. Now Parikshit asks a very important and beautiful question. Parikshit asks, tell me just one thing. How is it possible that these mothers loved their own, that is, they loved Krishna more than their own son? So normally every mother loves their son more than anyone else. And we saw that in the last 1 year, when Krishna took the form of their son, they loved him more than they loved when they were just their sons. So how is this even possible? And for this, Shuka Brahmarshi gives a beautiful response. He teaches the entire self-knowledge. He says, please understand, Parikshit, for everyone, their most dearest object is their own self. So people are dear only because they are connected to their self. So sarvesham api bhutanam nripa swatmaiva vallabha. So for everyone, what is dear is their self. And because the son is their son, the daughter is their daughter, the wealth is their wealth, it's dear. So everyone who is really considering their own self to be dear, and when they take the body to be their self, they consider the body to be the dearest thing. And when they consider the mind to be their self, they consider the mind to be the dearest thing. And everything connected to the body and mind, which as in relations, people, ideas, nationality, all of this comes only because it is seen as connected to me, and the me is either the body or the mind. Therefore, Shuka Brahmarishi says, what is truly dear is only one's own self. Everything else comes only from that. He says, Tasmat priyatamak swatma sarvesham api dehinam tadartameva sakalam jagadetat characharam. So the whole universe is dear Whatever is dear in this universe is dear only because it is connected to myself. And now he says the most important secret. He says, now you understand that very self in essence is Bhagavan. And when he takes this form as Krishna, he is actually the very self who has taken this form. He says, Krishnam enam evahi tvam atmanam akhilatmanam Jagadditaya so api atra deha iva abhati mayaya. So he is the Atma, the self of all. What is most dear to everyone is their own self. And that very self in its truest essence, if one gets past the illusion of the body as the self, the mind as the self, or even the ego as the self, and when one truly recognizes it, that true self who is the indwelling Paramatma is Bhagavan. And when that indwelling true self Paramatma has taken this form as Krishna, they instinctively, without any inquiry, they automatically, because of being the dearmost object in the whole universe as the true self, and when that self has taken this form as Krishna, they have this natural love for Krishna. So that's why he says, Bhagavad Rupam Akhilam na Anyad Vastu Iha Kinchana, because there is nothing here other than Krishna, other than Bhagavan. Everything that is there, all that is mobile, all that is immobile, everything that is there is only a manifestation of the Lord. And when the essence of everything is Krishna, everything is the Lord, and he has taken this form, how can there be anything more dear than him? He says, Sarveshamapi Vastunam Bhavarto Bhavati Sthidah Tasyapi Bhagavan Krishna Kimad Vastu Rupyatam. He says the essence of everything lies in their cause, and Krishna is the ultimate cause, and therefore what substance other than him can be loved? So when one recognizes this, that the self is the true object of love, then that recognition is the true essence of self knowledge. But the great benediction of Krishna as this avatar, as these pastimes, is that that very true, utmost beloved self, supreme self Paramatma, has taken this form as Krishna, has descended as Krishna. And because of that, the natural love for one's own supreme self is what is drawing us to Krishna with all the love that we have. And therefore, the love for Krishna in the form he is so beautifully enchanting as Shyama Sundara is the very love for our own beloved self. And therefore, that is why he says, those who take refuge in Krishna, they can cross this ocean of existence, this false ocean, as already pointed out. They can cross this just like the water in the hoof print of a calf. So when a calf walks and makes a hoof print, the water that is there is so little that one can cross effortlessly. Even a baby can cross. And that is how this ocean, in fact, it becomes nothing. Even the hoof print of a calf has a little bit of water. But the truth is, this ocean becomes completely nothing when this ocean that is seen as the infinite universe and bewildering, when one recognizes that everything is Krishna or Bhagavan's material energy, then there is nothing to cross. Everything is here and now perfect as it is. And thereby, Shuka Brahmarshi concludes and says, thus I have narrated to you the entire story of what happened and why, mysteriously, the boys narrated an incident a year later, even though it happened 1 year back. They narrated as if it happened that day. So he concludes by saying, the one who hears this story, this entire story of first Aghasura getting killed, and then the boys having picnic wherein they were kidnapped by Brahma, and Krishna then expanding as the boys, and then assuming all these forms, and then Brahma learning his lesson and offering his great prayer. This entire sequence is so blessed that one who simply listens to it with love and reverence will attain all the desired end. And the most desired end of all is true realization of our true self as the supreme being. With this chapter ends and this sequence of episodes also ends. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.